I remember the moment my name wasn't called. My breath caught in my throat as the lawyer folded the pages of the will and placed them gently on the mahogany desk. His expression was neutral, almost too neutral, like he already knew how this would go. My hands trembled slightly in my lap, but I tried to hide it beneath the folds of my black dress. The estate study felt colder than I remembered. The curtains were pulled back, sunlight pooling over the dust motes in the air, and outside, birds chirped like it was just another spring morning. Inside, it felt like the air had frozen. I sat between my cousins, Emily and Daniel, both dressed in head-to-toe black, like they were starring in some made-for-TV drama. Emily's perfume, something floral and sickly sweet, hung in the air. Daniel tapped one perfectly polished shoe against the wooden floor, just enough to be irritating. Then the lawyer cleared his throat. I, Marlene Atwood, being of sound mind and memory, do hereby declare this as my final will and testament. My stomach twisted into a knot. I kept waiting, expecting to hear my name. For some mention of the years I spent helping Aunt Marlene reorganize her attic, planting those ridiculous rose bushes, laughing with her over endless cups of mint tea. But the words came and went, and my name never followed them. Instead, to my beloved niece Emily and my nephew Daniel, I leave the entirety of my estate. Everything after that blurred. I sat frozen. My fingers gripped the arm of the leather chair so hard it squeaked. I felt heat rise to my face and my heart slammed in my chest. I couldn't look at anyone, couldn't breathe for a moment. Why? Why would she leave me out completely? Emily leaned toward me, lips curved into something that was supposed to resemble pity, but her eyes gleamed like a cat who'd just eaten the last canary. She told us, "You were too distant in the end," she whispered. Said it broke her heart. Her voice was syrupy, soft, fake. I blinked at her, my mouth slightly open, trying to process the words, but they stung too much to really land. Too distant? She said that? My thoughts spiraled. Had I really been that absent? I hadn't visited as much this past year, sure, but life got busy. Work, bills, moving. Still, we talked. We texted. She sent me a card just 2 weeks before she passed. It said, "My garden's blooming and I wish you were here." Why would she send that if she felt abandoned? Something didn't feel right. Daniel, for his part, stayed silent, just nodded solemnly like the good little heir. But I saw the flicker in his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking, that tiny nervous shift in his jaw, like someone who knew the truth was leaking through the cracks. And then there was the lawyer. He avoided my eyes the entire time. He fumbled with his glasses, shuffled the papers again, and then quickly began explaining the probate process to Emily and Daniel like I wasn't even there. I stood up slowly, my legs were shaky beneath me, but I forced a small, polite nod toward the lawyer. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily smiled again, tight, smug, like the kind of smile you give someone who just lost a game they didn't even know they were playing. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of Mrs. Hawthorne, the housekeeper, standing quietly in the hallway. Her eyes met mine. She didn't say a word, but there was something there, something unspoken, something heavy. She looked concerned, and just as I passed her, she reached out, slipped a folded note into my hand, and walked away. I didn't open it until I got into my car. It said, "Meet me by the greenhouse." Midnight. I stared at that note in my hands for what felt like forever. The paper was slightly crumpled, folded neatly like it had been waiting. The handwriting was unmistakable. Mrs. Hawthorne's looping script, steady and exact, just like the way she polished Aunt Marlene's silver or arranged the tea service every afternoon at 4, the greenhouse. I hadn't stepped foot in it since the last time I visited, 6 months ago. It was always Aunt Marlene's favorite place, quiet, humid. Smelled like earth and lemongrass. She used to joke that it was her little jungle, her secret hideaway from the disaster of humans. Back then, I didn't think much of it. Now, I was thinking about everything. Driving home that day, I kept hearing Emily's voice on loop. She said you were too distant, over and over like a song I hated but couldn't stop singing. But here's the thing. Aunt Marlene never made me feel distant. Even when life pulled me in every direction, when I was juggling work and bills and barely had time to think, she always left the door open, literally. The last time I drove out here, she greeted me barefoot in the garden, her hair in a messy braid, dirt on her fingers, arms outstretched like I hadn't missed a beat. "Finally, my girl's home," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled like rosemary and soil. She never judged, never made me feel guilty. She just loved me. So why would she leave me out of her will? That night, after I parked just beyond the estate gates, I walked through the back gardens, flashlight clutched in one hand, note in the other. Every step felt heavier than the last. My boots crunched softly over the gravel path, the chill in the air biting at my cheeks. The greenhouse stood ahead like a glass skeleton, glowing under the moonlight, half covered in ivy. I hadn't realized how eerie it could look at night. Inside, it was warmer. Steamy, almost. The scent of damp leaves and old clay pots hit me immediately. The shadows stretched long between rows of orchids and ferns. Mrs. Hawthorne was already there, standing perfectly still, hands clasped in front of her apron. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me like she was trying to decide if I was still the little girl who used to chase butterflies around the hibiscus plants. Then she nodded once. "Your aunt never changed her will," she said quietly. "Not the real one." I felt my pulse skip. What? She updated it about 2 months before she passed. I was there when she signed it. We even had a notary come to the house. She said she didn't want to leave anything to chance. I couldn't breathe for a moment. The greenhouse suddenly felt too warm. Then why? Why wasn't it red today? Mrs. Hawthorne reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. She placed it gently into my palm, like it was made of glass. "Because someone made sure it wouldn't be," she said. "But your aunt, she thought that might happen." I stared at the flash drive. It felt unreal, like I was holding a secret too big for one person to carry. My fingers tightened around it instinctively. Mrs. Hawthorne stepped closer. Her eyes, usually so calm, were sharp with quiet anger. "She trusted you. She told me, if anything happens to me, give this to her." I swallowed hard, heart pounding in my ears. "Watch it," she said. "Then you'll understand everything." I didn't sleep that night. The flash drive sat next to my laptop for hours before I worked up the nerve to click play. I just stared at it, trying to slow my racing thoughts. What was on it? A letter? A video? Would it confirm what I hoped, or what I feared? When I finally plugged it in, the file was simple. No password, no encryption, just a single video named Final Will, March 7th. The moment it opened, I stopped breathing. There she was, Aunt Marlene, sitting in her favorite chair. The faded velvet one with the frayed armrest from where the cat used to scratch. She looked tired, but alert, confident even. Her voice was clear. "This is Marlene Atwood," she began, looking straight at the camera. "This is to confirm that today I am signing an updated will. I am of sound mind, and this is being witnessed and notarized." My hands flew to my mouth. In the corner of the frame sat a man in a tan blazer, flipping through a folder. "I'm Daniel Collins, licensed notary. I'm here today at the request of Ms. Atwood." She turned to him and smiled. "Thank you, Daniel." Then she turned back to the camera. "To be clear, I want my entire estate, including the property, financial assets, and personal belongings, to go to my niece, my name." I felt something catch in my chest, like a breath I'd been holding for months finally escaped. "I love my family," she said gently, "but this estate, it's always belonged to someone who understands it, who lives it, and that's her." Tears blurred my vision, but I kept watching, every word etched into my bones. She wanted me to have it. She trusted me. She hadn't changed. They had. The video ended with her signature, the notary's stamp and a timestamp. March 7th, 11:12 a.m., 2 weeks before she died, 2 weeks before they locked me out of her house. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. 1,000 thoughts raced through me. Who had seen this? Why wasn't this version read at the estate meeting? Someone had buried this. I pulled out the original letter from the lawyer's folder, the one they read at the estate, dated March 1st, a week before this video. So the question wasn't whether Marlene changed her will. The question was, Who made the original one disappear? And then, something even darker crossed my mind. Someone knew about this video, and they still pretended I didn't exist. I needed answers. Real ones. I needed someone who could confirm this wasn't just a sentimental recording. Someone outside the family, someone with a license and a reason to tell the truth. I picked up my phone and searched the notary's name. Daniel Collins, certified notary, retired early 2023, living in Crestwood County. He was only a few hours away. The next morning, I called him. I didn't even know what I was going to say. My voice shook the entire time. But as soon as I mentioned Aunt Marlene, he said, "I remember her. Lovely woman. She insisted we film the signing to protect her niece." He paused. "That wasn't the will they read, was it?" I said nothing. I didn't have to. He sighed. "I'll get in touch with the state registrar. If someone forged something, it won't stay buried for long." I hung up the phone and just sat there. Everything I thought I lost wasn't lost. It was stolen, and I was going to get it back. By the time I pulled up to the estate the next morning, the clouds had rolled in thick and gray, like the sky knew a storm was coming. I hadn't called ahead. I didn't want to give them the chance to hide anything else. As I walked through the heavy front doors, I half expected to be stopped. But the place was quiet. Almost too quiet. The kind of silence that follows after someone's been caught but hasn't figured out how to admit it yet. Emily was in the sunroom, flipping through a magazine with a cup of coffee like nothing had happened. Her legs were crossed, her posture too perfect. She barely looked up when I walked in. "Well," she said without a smile, "back so soon?" I didn't answer right away. My heart was hammering, but I kept my expression even. Calm. I needed her to underestimate me, just for a little longer. Daniel walked in from the hallway, phone in hand. He froze when he saw me, just for a second. But I saw it, that flash of annoyance, or maybe fear. He covered it quickly, sliding the phone into his pocket. I looked at both of them, steady and measured. "We need to talk." Emily raised an eyebrow. "If this is about the will..." "It's about the real will," I said, cutting her off. My voice was soft, but I felt the steel in it. "The one Aunt Marlene signed on March 7th. The one you never mentioned." Daniel blinked. His jaw twitched. Emily's fingers stiffened around her cup. "You can drop the act," I said. "I've seen the video, the notarized one, the one where she leaves everything to me." No one spoke. The silence stretched so long I could hear the faint ticking of the antique wall clock behind them, like it was counting down to the end of their lie. "I've already spoken to the notary," I continued. "He remembers it. He's testifying." Emily finally set her cup down. Her lips parted, searching for the right lie, but the words just stalled. Daniel exhaled sharply, turning toward the window like he couldn't even look at me. "You don't understand," he muttered. She didn't mean to." "She did," I said flatly. "And she made sure someone would know, that someone was me." The room was starting to feel heavier now, denial slipping off them like a mask after a long performance. I could see it in their eyes, panic creeping in behind the false calm. "She trusted me," I said, my voice cracking a little despite how hard I tried to hold it steady, "and you both tried to erase that." No one denied it. No angry rebuttals, no fake outrage, just quiet, because deep down, they knew. And that silence said everything. I turned to leave, but just before I reached the door, Daniel said, "You won't get away with this." I paused, half-turned. "I'm not the one who did anything wrong," I said. "But you stole from a dead woman." He didn't have a comeback. I stepped outside into the cold air, my hands shaking, my heart still racing. But it felt different now. Not fear, clarity. I wasn't chasing shadows anymore. I had truth on my side. And the moment the court saw that video, everything was going to change. The hearing was scheduled just 10 days later. 10 days of waiting, pacing, questioning if I had done enough. 10 days of imagining every possible outcome, what they might say, how they might twist it. But also, 10 days of remembering Aunt Marlene's voice in that video, calm, certain. Her love for me etched into every word. That's what kept me going. The courtroom was quiet when I arrived. Clean beige walls, heavy wooden benches. A judge who looked bored and slightly irritated to be up so early. My lawyer, Mr. DeSoto, gave me a firm nod as I slid into the seat beside him. He'd been the one to file the petition to challenge the will, armed with the video, the notary's statement, and a letter from Mrs. Hawthorne, detailing what she'd witnessed the day of the real signing. Emily and Daniel were already there. Emily wore a navy suit and a necklace I recognized, Aunt Marlene's. My stomach turned. Daniel sat stiffly beside her, scrolling through his phone until the bailiff told him to put it away. He didn't look at me. Their lawyer stood, all buttoned-up charm and false authority, and began with a speech about family disputes and misunderstandings. It was carefully rehearsed and deeply hollow. But then Mr. DeSoto stood, calm, precise. "Your Honor," he said, "the video you're about to see captures the signing of a second legally binding will, witnessed and notarized, which supersedes the version presented at the initial reading." The judge tilted his head slightly. "Proceed." The lights dimmed slightly as the bailiff turned on the monitor, and there she was, Aunt Marlene, looking alive again. I hadn't realized how emotional it would be seeing her in that moment. She looked so clear-eyed, so deliberate. The courtroom fell still as her voice filled the space. "I leave my estate to my niece, my name, who has always been more than family. She is my legacy." Every word hit like a heartbeat. My heartbeat. I glanced at Emily. Her face was frozen, but her hands were clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. Daniel didn't blink. His jaw was locked like he might shatter his own teeth. When the video ended, the notary was called to the stand. Mr. Collins walked in with quiet dignity. He confirmed everything, the date, the signatures, that he had no reason to believe Marlene was under duress or confused. His testimony was clear, factual, and impossible to argue with. Then the judge turned to their lawyer. "Do you contest the validity of this video?" A long pause. The lawyer swallowed. "No, Your Honor." That was it. No dramatic objections, no angry outbursts, just defeat. Deflation. The judge nodded and scribbled a few notes. "The court will recognize the March 7th will as the final and legally binding testament of Marlene Atwood." The gavel struck once. It echoed like thunder. I exhaled. I hadn't even realized I was holding my breath. Emily stormed out of the courtroom. Daniel followed, head down. Not a word. No apology. Just silence again. But this time it was theirs to carry. Mr. DeSoto touched my shoulder gently. "She trusted you for a reason." I nodded, barely able to speak, not because I was angry or smug, but because finally someone had listened. And finally Aunt Marlene's voice had been heard. After the hearing, I didn't rush back into the estate. I just sat in my car for a while, engine off, forehead resting against the steering wheel. The quiet was different now, not empty or cold, but heavy in a way that felt real. Like something had settled into place finally. It wasn't just about the house, or the land, or even the money. It was about her, about being seen, about not letting someone rewrite the truth after she was gone. I walked through the front doors the next day and everything felt sharper. The air, the light, the silence. This time I noticed things. Her favorite shawl still draped over the armchair, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the hall, a teacup left on the windowsill, just like the one she used every morning, always forgetting to bring it back in. I wandered into her study, fingertips brushing over the spines of her books. Some were the same ones she used to read to me when I was little. I remembered sitting on her lap, curled up like a cat, falling asleep to the sound of her voice. And there it was, on her desk, a small wrapped package with my name in her handwriting. My heart jumped. I picked it up carefully. The wrapping was plain, just brown paper tied with twine. Inside was one of her old journals, leather-bound, worn around the edges. I opened it slowly, not sure what I was about to find. On the first page, she'd written, "For the daughter I chose. If you're reading this, it means you kept your promise, even when it wasn't easy. Thank you for loving me exactly as I was." I didn't even try to stop the tears. I let them fall, hot and heavy, onto the page, because that's what all of this had really been about. Not about proving Emily or Daniel wrong, not about fighting for an inheritance. It was about making sure Aunt Marlene wasn't erased, about honoring what we had, quiet, honest, imperfect, but real. Over the next few weeks, I started putting the pieces back together. I stayed at the estate, sorting through memories, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to breathe life into again. Mrs. Hawthorne helped. She never said, "I told you so," but I could see it in her smile. That quiet satisfaction of knowing the right person had finally come home. Sometimes I'd catch her in the garden, humming while trimming back the roses. Aunt Marlene's roses, the ones we planted together the summer I turned 12. I think that's when I knew. This wasn't just a house anymore. It was her. It was Sunday dinners and lavender soap and handwritten notes left in books. It was warm baths when I had a fever and belly laughs over tea. It was a lifetime of tiny kindnesses no will could ever measure, and now it was mine to protect. Looking back, I've learned something I'll never forget. When people lie, they usually expect you to stay quiet, to doubt yourself, to walk away. But when someone loves you the way she did, they leave you the truth. Sometimes it's hidden in a flash drive, sometimes it's tucked in a journal, and sometimes it's just in the way the roses keep blooming, year after year, whether anyone's watching or not. So, yeah, that's my story. It still feels surreal sometimes, how close I came to walking away thinking I didn't matter. But if there's anything I've learned, it's this. Silence doesn't mean absence, and love, real love, leaves traces. You just have to trust yourself enough to follow them. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt overlooked or underestimated, I'd really love to hear about it. Share your story in the comments. I read every single one, and your voice matters here. If you felt something while watching this, if it made you think of someone you miss or someone you fought for, please like the video. It really helps more people find stories like this. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it. Text it to them. DM it. Stories can heal. They can open eyes. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I've got more stories coming. Real ones, raw ones, the kind that stay with you long after the video ends. And I'd love to have you with me. Thank you for being here. Really. Until next time.